Hey there, friends. One of the most unconstitutional restrictions on your right to self-defense has finally been struck down. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow here, the one and only truth pimp, dealing you a vulgar display of logic and reason. The ban on firearms in U.S. post offices is on its way out. That means for the first time in years, law-abiding Americans are not being forced to choose between mailing a package and exercising their Second Amendment rights. Now, there are some stipulations and slight restrictions in here, so I don't want anybody to go crazy and go run out and start waving your firearm at the post office and say, I can carry in here now. I'll get to that in a minute. But let's just call this ruling what it is. It's common sense. For years, law-abiding citizens have been disarmed at post offices by a government that pretends that a plastic sign could magically stop a violent criminal from entering the property and killing innocent people. Newsflash, criminals do not read signs, and they definitely don't follow gun laws. That's kind of why they're criminals. The only people being affected are honest men and women like ourselves who just want to protect themselves and their families. But it gets worse. When you look at where a vast majority of these post offices are in the United States, you'll see that a lot of them reside in pretty crime-ridden areas. I put together this pie chart using public crime data for urban and suburban post offices. So we're talking about branches located in the real world, not just tiny rural spots where crime is already low and nothing ever happens. Here's the breakdown. About a quarter, 25% of city and suburban post offices are right in the heart of high crime neighborhoods. Places where violent crime and property crime happen every single day on the regular. Another 48% of these post offices are in medium crime areas where you're only going to get assaulted halfway, where trouble shows up more than you like though. Only 27% are lucky enough to sit in parts of town where the risks are low. Let that sink in for a minute. We've got thousands of post offices nationwide serving millions of people every single day. In the most dangerous neighborhoods, Americans have been forced to walk in unarmed, hoping they don't become the next victim of the crime surrounding them outside and in the parking lot. The bureaucrats behind these bans don't care about your safety or anyone else's because, let's face it, they have armed security already. Their only solution is to make sure the good guys leave their rights in their car outside. That's right. I'm going to show you some irony here. As I was doing some research for this story, some of the AI suggestions that you stumble across on Google or wherever, depending on what engine you're using, says various things. And one of them was, currently it's prohibiting people still from carrying firearms in the post office. Oh, but don't leave your firearm in the car outside. So do what? What is your suggestion? I guess you're suggesting this might be some kind of halfway effort to disarm people in general. I guess they're suggesting that you leave it at home because we surely don't want you to leave it in the car and you can't bring it inside. I wasn't asking for permission to begin with. The Constitution is not a suggestion. The Second Amendment protects our right to keep and bear arms, period. That right does not vanish because you walk through a government building's front door. The founders never wrote in any exceptions for postal lobbies or parking lots. Remember Bruen? Yeah, we're going to rely on tradition here. The reality here, creating arbitrary gun-free zones does not make America safe. It just makes government feel powerful and controlling while leaving honest people defenseless in exactly the places where they need the protection the most. But to be clear, right now this is not a blanket thing that affects every law-abiding gun owner out there. It covers the plaintiffs and Firearm Policy Coalition, who was the part of the plaintiffs in this case. This is important. Now, I think this will have a trickle-down effect at some point, and I do think other people will be covered essentially in this through different processes. But the Texas federal court ruling doesn't automatically apply to all Americans, even though the judge found certain federal laws unconstitutional. The reason is that the federal district court decisions are usually only binding for the specific parties in that case. Again, the plaintiffs and the government defendants. There were two gun owners and Firearms Policy Coalition in this case. The only time a district court's order affects everyone nationwide is when the court issues a, quote, universal or nationwide injunction that bars the government from enforcing the law against anyone, not just the plaintiffs. However, in 2025, the Supreme Court limited the power of lower federal courts to grant these broad, universal injunctions, saying courts should usually grant relief only to the plaintiffs who sued, not all Americans. True nationwide or binding precedent for the whole country happens only when an appellate court, especially the Supreme Court in this case, makes a ruling. Until that happens, the law may remain in effect for other people who are not parties to the lawsuit unless higher courts or Congress act to change enforcement nationwide. And we know the cowards in Congress are not going to change this. Candy asses. They don't want to rule or work on anything that has anything to do, especially not pro-gun legislation. They showed this here recently in the last few months. While this may be somewhat of a delayed victory for a lot of Americans, the win is not just a victory for gun owners. It's a victory for every American who believes self-defense is a fundamental human right. It proves that enough is enough. The time for feel-good policies that only help criminals, it's over. If you're a law-abiding citizen, you should never have to apologize for wanting to defend yourself, your loved ones, or anyone else the next time evil comes knocking, or when you want to drop a letter off at the post office in a crappy part of town. Looking ahead, stay alert. Don't do anything silly. Again, if you're like me, you weren't asking for permission to begin with. Not going into any further discussion on that. But the post office, even if something happens to where it affects everybody nationwide and every post office nationwide, they're going to be slow to loosen those reins. They're going to be slow to change that policy. They're going to be slow to take down those signs or whatever. I'm not saying they'll get away with disarming you. What I'm saying is, if something happens, you'll likely win in the end. But remember, it would be against the federal government, who has a bottomless pit of your money and my money. So I say don't test the waters. In other words, don't go dancing around in the post office bragging that you can carry in there now. Do what you were always doing before and just be quiet about it. Believe me, the gun control activists are not going to give up quietly on this, so make sure you stay diligent in everything you do as a responsible gun owner. Stay strong, stay educated, and keep fighting for your rights. If you support the right for all Americans to protect themselves no matter where they are, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, support the channel, share the video, and hey, leave a comment with your thoughts and experiences down below in the comment section dealing with gun-free zones. Help us spread these facts, because freedom doesn't defend itself, armed Americans do. Don't forget, guys, if you're looking for a book to educate yourself and to educate the idiots out there who can't think for themselves regarding mass shootings, go to damnliars.net. Again, damnliars.net, and get my brand new book, Damn Liars.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
It's hanging around.